you. So our agenda today is going to be what is anxiety, what maintains anxiety, and how we can help our kids work through anxiety. We did look through all of the questions that were submitted on the Google form. We appreciate your eagerness and willingness to learn about anxiety, and I believe they'll all be answered throughout our presentation today. So first, what is anxiety? Anxiety is an internal sense of worry, dread, or fear. It may or may not have a clear cause, and it can be a typical response. Another thing to note about anxiety is it can be real or perceived. So, for instance, an example of real anxiety is the student being worried that they're going to be late to class or late to school. An example of perceived anxiety, we were talking about this yesterday, and Ms. Wright shared with us her perceived anxiety is driving on this specific ramp. It's very high. She gets very worried when she drives on it. And so even though it's not real, that the ramp may collapse, it is real to her. And so it causes her a great deal of anxiety. It also can be a natural response or feeling about being worried. And so we've all been anxious at some point. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing. We just want to make sure that we know how to overcome it. The forms of anxiety. So we have general anxiety. This can be, for example, is am I going to pass my test today? We have phobias. It's an extreme fear. For example, whenever someone may feel claustrophobic, so they get very anxious when they're in an enclosed area. We have panic. Students have difficulty breathing. They may experience chest pain. Obsessions. An example of this is somebody who likes something in specific order. So maybe on their bookshelf, they have to have their books from tallest to weakest. And if one of those books gets out of place, they get very anxious about that. Compulsions. An example is someone checking or rechecking something. For example, they lock the door. But they have to go back to make sure that it is locked. So they recheck and they're feeling very worried about it. Social anxiety, being forced to socialize with others. This also can be even family members. And trauma reactions. This can happen even if the trauma has happened in previous years, but the student hasn't worked through it. That still can cause them a lot of anxiety. Maybe they were in a car accident when it was raining. And so every time it rains now, they get very anxious, very worked up about it. Common symptoms of anxiety. So expressed fears or worries, crying, irritability. This may look like getting angry very quickly or snapping at others. Oppositional behavior. So they may argue, they may throw temper tantrums. Silly behavior or mood swings. Antsy or fidgeting, so they're pacing throughout the room. They have difficulty sitting still or difficulty concentrating. Self-doubt, so they lack confidence in their ability to do something. Maybe they have volleyball tryouts coming up and they are not confident in themselves. It can cause them a lot of anxiety. Clingy behavior, they're scared to leave their parent. They become very attached. Sleep disturbance. They have difficulty falling asleep or even staying asleep. Their mind's just constantly racing. Repetitive thoughts. They continue to have thoughts like, I'm never going to make my parents proud, or I'm never going to make good grades, and panic. Physical reactions. So we talk to students a lot about body awareness and what physically happens whenever they're experiencing anxiety. If they listen to their bodies, hopefully they can prevent the anxiety from escalating. Some examples of physical reactions are breathing fast. Whenever they breathe fast, their heart rate increases. So for the older kids who have smartwatches, we'll look at their heart rate and see, if they notice patterns throughout the day where their heart rate gets really high and they're feeling very anxious. We can discuss it at that time to see, what is triggering them to feel that way. Butterflies in stomach, needing to go to the bathroom, wobbly knees, tense muscles. Whenever kids who are anxious and they come in our offices, oftentimes their shoulders will be up. They're very tense. And so then we can do some relaxation techniques, and you can just see it in their body language, how it changes. Crying, sweating, they feel shaky. They'll get stomach aches, go to the nurse often, and headaches. So what happens when kids, whenever they're anxious? So it's going to start with something that triggers them. So their body is going to respond. It starts to send signals to their brain. They're going to start to have verbal thoughts like, I'm not safe, everyone's going to laugh at me. They also can have visual thoughts to where maybe they are creating a story in their head. Like they are picturing walking into a room and everybody just starts laughing at them. And then that's when the actions occur. So in a result, they throw temper tantrums, they start crying, they start shaking, those other type of reactions. Now I'm going to turn it over to Angela Wright.
Good morning. So I'm going to talk about those stressful experiences that people with anxiety may experience. Going to the doctor or dentist may be a stressful moment for them. Not enjoying that moment, not liking to get shots, and so it could trigger different emotions. Current events that may be occurring that they're hearing about at school or on the news. Being away from their parents or guardians, they may be attached to them, so they have a lot of stress when they're not with their family. Family stressors that may be occurring. Perfectionism. A lot of kids worry if they're not perfect that that something's wrong with them. Social situations where they're in groups where they feel stressed out because maybe they don't know the people there or they just feel uncomfortable, or unexpected changes, things that they may not have expected to happen starts to happening, and so then they begin to feel stress. Some of those anxious behaviors that they begin to display would be avoidance. Avoidance could look like not wanting to go to school, or even once they get to school, they want to go to the nurse, they want to call home, they want to be picked up. It also could show up as going to the restroom a lot, going to the nurse, just not wanting to be at school. Compulsive behaviors, excessive hand washing until the skin is raw. Ask them wanting reassurance, so they may be asking the teacher, "Am I doing good? Am I doing this?" So just wanting that reassurance. Um, Difficulty concentrating, not being able to concentrate on anything. Their only focus is whatever is consuming them at the moment. Difficulty sleeping, where they're waking up at different times during the night, or even just having difficulty going to sleep. What maintains anxiety? Allowing or encouraging avoidance supports the child's avoidance. And so that means that when you have a child that doesn't want to come to school, I don't want to come to school. And so you allow them to stay home, that's encouraging the avoidance. And so from there on, the kid knows, like, hey, I don't want to go to school. My mom's going to allow me. And so you're supporting that child's avoidance. Thinking errors. Thinking errors are irrational beliefs that contribute to those uncomfortable emotions and unwanted behavior. So, for example, I completely failed my interview. I'll never be able to forgive them. I'm not going to make the team. So, just those irrational beliefs. Lack of coping skills. Where that child doesn't know how to have those moments where they can come down, they can breathe, so that way they can allow themselves to kind of calm down. Excessive reassuring, where they want to be told that you're doing great, there's no problem, everything is good. Talking over. This prevents the child from developing those coping skills. I'm sorry, taking over. And that just means that if sometimes that the child is saying that they have to do something, but the parents, okay, it's easier for me to do it. So I'm just going to do it just to make things easy on that child. And so that prevents them from developing coping skills. Outcomes of avoidance. When that child enters a difficult situation, they become to feel anxious or fearful. So they avoid the situation or they ask others for help. So it's a short-term anxiety relief. For example, when the parents picks the child up from school, it allows them to stay home. So the short-term anxiety relief becomes the child's coping skills. The child continues to think that the situation is dangerous and remains fearful. And so you continue to have those struggles with that child with coming to school because you gave them that short-term relief. What happens with avoidance? So avoidance, so if a child is having some test anxiety, so the child enters this feared situation to where I know I'm going to have a test today, so I'm going to do all these things to avoid it. I don't want to come to school due to having this test. And so they're doing all these things. So I don't feel good. I have a stomach ache. I want to stay home. But when they return to school, they still have to take the test. This causes them to get behind, which causes more anxiety. So that anxiety returns. Okay, so the next part is going to be presented by Faye.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, so just like Angela said, so when a child avoids the situation, it definitely provides that immediate relief from those anxious feelings. But guess what happens after that? The brain starts to learn that the only way to feel better is to avoid. And so the anxiety at that point just stays as strong or even grows because they never get the chance to see that they can handle it, right? So let's think about what happens if your child doesn't avoid the situation and instead of avoiding it, actually faces it. They face their fear, they face their anxiety, right? So when they stay in that situation, it'll be uncomfortable, right? But at the same time that they're uncomfortable, something powerful is going to happen. Okay, their brain is going to start to learn that that feared outcome that they think is going to happen doesn't always happen. And if it does happen, they'll be able to handle it, which a lot of times they don't feel like they have the capacity to handle it until they experience it, right? And so over time, their anxiety will decrease because they're going to start learning that they can actually handle it. Okay. So let me give you a quick example. Can you go back, Angela? Let me give you a quick example. Let's say if your child feels anxious about going to a new friend's house and they avoid it, and their anxiety about social situations may stay the same or get worse. But if they go, even though they feel a little nervous, they may discover that they can manage their feelings, right? They can enjoy themselves and they feel proud of at least trying. And over time, what's going to happen is that it's going to build the confidence and it's going to reduce their anxiety about similar situations. Okay. All right, so now that we understand why avoiding fears keeps the anxiety alive, let's talk about how to help your child face their fears in a way that feels safe to them and manageable for them, right? The key is going to be to take it slow, give them the tools to succeed, and then celebrate their efforts, right? Because it is a big deal for them to actually face their fears. So just start small, go slow, right? Facing fears doesn't mean jumping in the deep end right away. Want to break it into smaller, less overwhelming steps, right? Let's say if your child is afraid of the dark, the first step might be sitting in a dim lit room together before moving toward turning off all the lights, right? Or use tools for support. Tools like a nightlight, a lucky stone, or a stuffed animal that can comfort them while they're facing their fears. Those tools, they just give them a sense of control and safety and what feels to them like an overwhelming situation. Right? I also would love for you guys to practice positive self-talk. Anxiety often comes with negative thoughts like, oh, I can't do this, or something bad is going to happen. But if you teach your child to replace these thoughts with encouraging ones, oh, I can handle this. I'm safe right now. You can model this for them by using those similar phrases in your own life, right? And then celebrating successes. Facing fears is hard work. Reward your child, not just for the big moments, but for the small victories along the way. It could be a hug, a verbal praise, a special treat, whatever makes them feel proud of their courage, right? But the goal isn't to get rid of all the fear. It's for your child, just basically to help them learn that they can face it and come out okay. And over time, what that's going to do, it's going to build that resilience and it's going to give them those tools to manage that anxiety on their own. Okay. So our thoughts play a huge role in how we feel and respond to situations. As adults, we all know that we get in our heads, right? Sometimes children with anxiety have what we call irrational thoughts. Those are those thoughts that jump to those worst case scenarios. For example, if a parent is late picking them up, instead of thinking, oh, well, maybe there's a little traffic, what they're thinking is, oh my goodness, what if they got into a car crash, right? So this kind of thinking, what it does is it heightens their anxiety and it makes the situations feel more overwhelming than they actually are. But the good news is that as parents, you can help your child challenge those irrational thoughts and shift that mindset toward more of a more balanced thinking. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to acknowledge their feelings. Just start by validating their emotions. You might say, you know what, I can see that you're worried. That must feel so scary for you. So what that's going to do is that's going to help your child feel heard and understood. Validate them, right? And gently challenge that thought. Once they feel supported, just guide them to consider a more realistic perspective. Ask questions like, what's another reason I might be late? Or has that ever happened before? And so what that's going to do is going to help them recognize that their initial thought might not be the only explanation, right? And then if you model balanced thinking, just kind of show your child how you manage your own worries. So for example, you might say, you know what, I was worried when I didn't hear from your dad, but then I remembered that his phone might have died and he left his charger at home. So when they see you modeling that, when they see you going through that thought process, they're going to pick up on that. And then I want you to practice with them and encourage your child to replace those what if thoughts with what is more likely, right? So once we help them reframe those thoughts, we're teaching them that they have the power to control how they perceive those situations. And then over time, what that's going to do is that's going to help reduce the anxiety and builds their confidence in handling those type of situations whenever they fear uncertainty, right? All right. So let's talk about how we can help our kids manage their anxiety. Anxiety obviously feels very overwhelming for children, but there are practical ways to help them cope. These strategies not only reduce the anxiety, but it also builds that resilience over time. So let's look at these right here that are listed. Sleep, healthy food, and exercise. So those are actually the foundation of mental health. A well-rested child is better equipped to handle stress. Nutritious foods, they fuel their brain. Regular exercise releases those natural chemicals like endorphins. And so those endorphins actually improve the mood and it calms their anxiety. So I want you to think of these as the basics that set them up for success for every day that they have to come to school, or every day that they do any type of activity, right? Connecting with family and friends, animals, and nature. So connection is a powerful antidote to anxiety, whether it's spending time with family, laughing with friends, cuddling a pet, taking a walk outside. You'll be surprised what the sun can do. Once that sun hits them and they get that vitamin D, it puts them in a great mood. Those are the moments that help kids feel grounded and supported. Just encourage that time together where they can share their feelings or just enjoy the company of others as a family or even with friends, right? All right, let's see, building on strengths and interests. So every child has something that they're good at or passionate about. It could be art, it could be sports, it can be music, puzzles, engaging in any type of activity that they love. It boosts their confidence and it gives them that sense of accomplishment. And so that actually counters those anxious thoughts, right? And the positive self-talk. Kids can be very hard on themselves. Just as adults, we're hard on ourselves a lot, so are kids. So just kind of teach them to challenge these anxious thoughts by replacing them with the encouraging ones. For example, instead of thinking, oh, I can't do this, they can learn to say, I'm nervous, but I've done hard things before, and I'm going to go ahead and try my best, right? And also avoid overbooking of activities. While structured activities are great, too many can overwhelm a child and leave no room for downtime. We actually hear that a lot in our children. When they're stressed and they're overwhelmed and they're really suffering from anxiety, it's because they have such a packed schedule. Yes, they love what they do, but it does overwhelm them. And so just be mindful of your child's schedule and how they're feeling, because sometimes less is more when it comes to managing that anxiety, right? And just let them be a kid. In a world that we live in, you know how it is. It pushes kids to grow up quickly, and they need time to simply play. Just explore and just relax, right? Just free play, unstructured time. It allows them to recharge and express themselves without that pressure. All right, so just remember that these coping skills, no coping skills are a one-size-fits-all solution, right? Some kids can connect with certain strategies more than others, and that's okay. The key is just to make sure that you create that supportive environment where they feel safe to experiment with what tools works best for them. And now it's time for Stefania.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to go over the common strategies for parents because we know as parents we are always modeling for our children, even when we think they're not watching, they are watching us. So we all naturally have anxiety. Children, parents, everybody does. That's a normal response to our emotions. So if you catch yourself showing signs of anxiety, try number one is catch your breath. Pause, think about, withdraw, stop what you're doing for a minute, plan your response, what you are going to say or how you're going to react to the situation. Number two is accept the negative feelings. A lot of times we want to fix the problem with our child. We want to say, no, don't feel that way, or so sometimes that's hard for us as parents to hear those negative thoughts that our children are saying or feeling, but try to accept and embrace that because that is really giving your child a safe place to express themselves. And they are trying to express themselves if they are saying things that are, even though it's a negative feeling, that is how they're feeling. So a response maybe you could say as a parent is, I see you're feeling that way, or uh-oh, okay. And maybe then you try to shift their mindset from there. Number three is labeling their emotions. So just reiterating what I think you're saying or what I hear you saying is you feel nervous or you feel anxious or you feel scared or you feel sad or angry. Those are you're just labeling that emotion and trying to help them through that process will lower their anxiety. And then number four is you're constantly, I know we don't like this as parents, but we are constantly on. Our child is watching us even when we don't want them watching us because maybe we're not having the best moment. But you're teaching your child coping skills by how you cope with your anxiety. So if you can remain calm, you are modeling that for your child. If you are really stressed out and you're yelling and screaming, and we all have moments like that, but we try to be really self-aware how we're modeling coping skills for our children. So the goal is the ability to calm down physically, so our breathing, our emotions, and get a regulation of our self, regulation there. So an ability to talk through the situations with your child and then help them to problem solve and create a plan B. Okay, so one thing is reassuring the child. Let's say they don't want to come to school because maybe they're scared that mom or dad may not be there when they get home from school. So reassuring the student, your child, and then also, it's not an option not to come to school. So what is going to be our plan B? And I'm going to go through that on the next slide. So if your child is having a lot of anxiety, here's some strategies that we can use at school. And so adapt study skills as needed. Teach your child that mistakes are lesson learned. And that's sometimes difficult because we don't want to see our kids fail. We don't want to see them have to learn the hard way. So we try to protect, we helicopter, we've heard that term before probably, helicopter parent. We want to not let them face some of those challenges, but it's in those challenges that the children really, we know, grow from, and the resilience comes out, and that's what we need to teach our children, and that's going to help prepare them better for life. And so the last one, if your child is diagnosed with anxiety, there is a 504 plan that we can put in place at school to help them as well. And so just reach out to your campus counselor and they can help you with that. And some test taken strategies for anxiety is practice, practice, practice. We know the more practice, the more comfortable they feel, the better they feel going into a test. That lowers anxiety. Practice some calming strategies with them, breathing, eating a good breakfast, all of those things, and doing a lot of self-talk and reflection with your child will also be helpful. And then there are also tests and accommodations if needed if your child is diagnosed with the anxiety disorder. So when to seek professional help. This one is a good one because sometimes, as we know, anxiety is a natural response and we all have some anxiety. That is normal, that is natural. But when do we really see that we need to seek that outside professional help? I would say when it's severe, and when I mean severe, they are having challenges just doing normal tasks, their everyday living. That is a red flag, a sign that, okay, we need to maybe seek some outside help. Or we've tried all these strategies. We tried the breathing exercises. We've tried the self-talk. We've tried all these coping mechanisms that you've been taught and that you know should work, but they're not working. Then that's time to reach out also for some professional help. Also, when the relationship, there's the parent-child relationship factors. So that could be there's a conflict and it's not being solved. And so that could also be a time that you know to seek out extra professional help. Or the parent's own anxiety. If you're not able to handle your own anxiety, it will be difficult for the child to also handle their anxiety. So just being self-aware where you're at and where your child's at, and to seek professional help if you need it, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We would just like to say thank you for taking the time to come on and learn about anxiety, and that we really appreciate your help and support. If you need any assistance, there is a resource list on our Alvin ISD district webpage that you can reach out, or you can reach out to the school counselors or us, the SEL counselors. We're all happy to help you in any way. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, so much for that presentation. That was some amazing information for all of us, not just our kids, but for ourselves as adults. I do want to go ahead and move into the next part of this presentation. I know some of you have questions, but we will open it up at the end if you have some additional questions. But I would like to introduce Sergeant Martin, who's with our Alvin ISD PD. And she is going to just take a couple more minutes to talk about some gun safety tips, some additional great information that we need.
Hi, hello. Thank you so much for having the police department in on this very important subject. As you know, being a member of the Alvin ISD Police Department, we spend a good majority of our time with the students during the day, and it's very important for us to be able to recognize when any of our students are in crisis or experiencing something, so we can get them to their counselor or their principal in order to get help. Also, a part of our job is to do what we can to help our parents and open up doors and resources for them to be able to talk to their students and have these difficult conversations. As we all know, mental health is very big topic. It's also a very difficult topic to speak with our parents, or our parents speaking with our child over, also along with gun safety. And us as a police department, these are things we want to help parents with and help our community members with. So I have a short video for you that I think kind of opens the door of the important topics that you've been covering today. So I'm gonna let you watch that, and then we'll pick up from there.
We're coming together to help parents better understand the challenges our teens face in today's complex world.
Teens today are dealing with more anxiety, loneliness, depression, and stress than generations before them. Of greatest concern is suicide, which is the second leading cause of death for young people, and these numbers are on the rise. Many parents know that mental health is just as important as physical health. What parents may not know is how to recognize that their child needs help or when and how to step in. We recognize that starting these conversations can be difficult. There's still such a stigma around mental health conditions, and of course, as parents, we may be concerned about the mental health of our children.
That's why NSSF and AFSP have worked together to develop this resource, a guide for parents understanding youth mental health and preventing unauthorized access to firearms. Our hope is to equip parents to understand mental health warning signs, recognize if their kids need help, and know how to begin a constructive conversation that pushes past stigma. We also focus on helping parents create a safe home environment, including advice on securing your firearms and preventing access to other lethal means of suicide.
The first step for parents concerned that their teen may be thinking about suicide or harming themselves is to examine risk factors, which fall into three areas: health, environmental, and historical risk factors. The health area encompasses physical and mental health and includes things such as, but not limited to, depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety disorder including PTSD, substance abuse, and any serious or chronic health conditions. Teens considering suicide may also be prompted by stressful life events that shape their environment. Some of these include the death of a family member or close friend, any kind of family turmoil such as a parent's divorce or family transitions, family financial troubles, and significant rejection, particularly from their peer group. This can be related to social dynamics, athletics, or other extracurriculars, or even their academics. When assessing risk, parents should also weigh historical factors or factors in their child's history. These are things that include previous self-harm attempts, any history of childhood abuse, neglect, or trauma, and a family history of suicide or exposure to another person's suicide. Teens who face these stressors are at higher risk of feeling that they may want to hurt themselves. Parents should also be aware of warning signs that your teen may be at risk for suicide. These tend to fall in three categories: talk, behavior, and mood. Your teen might be talking or saying things that indicate increased suicide risk, such as expressing being a burden to others or feeling trapped or feeling hopeless and having no reason to live. Changes in behavior can be isolating, sleeping too much or too little, and acting recklessly. And changes in mood can be increased depression, anxiety, or feelings of rage. Parents should pay attention if their teen shows any of these signs, and our guide offers tips to start a conversation.
If you think your child may be struggling with some of these issues, it's crucial to take steps to secure potentially lethal means of harming oneself or others. That might mean rethinking how and where you store your gun. A few safe storage options for firearms include a cable lock. Cable locks can be used on most firearms. The cable runs through the barrel or action of the firearm to prevent it from being fired, requiring either a key or a combination to unlock it. A gun case or a lockbox. These storage options have integrated locks that provide reliable protection of firearms. Some have biometric security options to ensure only authorized people have access. Or a full-size safe. A large safe allows gun owners to store multiple firearms, including both long and short guns, in one secure location. Keeping guns out of the wrong hands is a firearm owner's most important priority, and securing a firearm is one of the most important steps parents can take to protect at-risk teens and others in the home. Increasing our knowledge of adolescents' mental health, combined with secure firearm storage options, is a powerful combination to save lives.
This guide for parents is an important first step to better understanding mental health, how to talk to your teen, and the steps you can take to help prevent suicides, especially when it comes to securing firearms. We hope you find these tools helpful.
Obviously, this is a really tough subject for parents to deal with, but the reality is it shouldn't be ignored, as suicides are preventable. We applaud you for taking this step to learn more. We encourage you to download the full guide from either of our websites, and we hope you'll share it with fellow parents.
Thanks for your attention, and please, if you or anyone you know is in crisis right now, use the information on the screen to get help right away and keep these numbers close by. Suicide really can be prevented, and often all it takes is one caring person to get involved. Thanks for listening.
Okay, so as you can see, this is a very important topic that we covered. The Alvin ISD Police Department, we have partnered with Project Child Safe, and by partnering with them, they were able to furnish us gun locks at no charge that we can provide to our parents, family members, for those that own firearms in order to I apologize, it appears we have a fire alarm, to provide it to our parents and our community members at free of charge. Now, we have these available at Alvin ISD Police Department, or if you can make it to one of our campuses and get with one of our campus officers, we will ensure that we get the locks to you. Also, our guide will be shared with you through email. You can also access Project Child Safe through our police department webpage. Okay, thank you for allowing me to join you today.
Okay, we gotta go, but the team of counselors can stay. We need to leave the building. There's a fire alarm in here. But thank you, parents, for joining us, and we are out.
Thank you, Anna. You can stop recording as well, since you gotta run. So I know that there is.